Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is the government's first report on red tape and what we're doing to reduce it. Next week, the parliament will have its first ever repeal day to abolish regulation and legislation that's outlived its usefulness or is doing more harm than good. Cutting red tape is at the heart of this government's mission to build a strong and prosperous economy for a safe and secure Australia. Because red tape is what officials wrap people in when they think that government knows best. So cutting red tape is a sign that this government and this parliament want Australians, individually and in the community, to have more control over their own lives. It's an acknowledgement of the people, our masters. Next week's repeal day will scrap more than 9,500 unnecessary or counterproductive regulations and 1,000 redundant acts of parliament. More than 50,000 pages will disappear from the statute books. Added to measures already announced, repeal day initiatives will bring total red tape savings to $720 million a year every year. The first repeal day will abolish the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission because people serving our community don't deserve a new level of scrutiny. It will abolish the Independent National Security Legislation Monitor because all relevant legislation has already been reviewed and the former government ignored all the monitor's recommendations. Redundant acts, for instance, regulating the 1970s conversion from imperial to metric measurement, governing state naval divisions that became part of the Royal Australian Navy 101 years ago, and facilitating the construction of the Snowy Mountains scheme that was completed in 1974 will all go. As a result of repeal day, films will only need to be classified once, not again and again, when they are reissued in DVD, Blu-ray or 3D. As a result of repeal day, businesses won't have to reapply to use agricultural chemicals and veterinary medicines because one approval should be enough. Universities will no longer have to submit capital asset management surveys in addition to other surveys which cover essentially the same thing. And jobs agencies will no longer be required to keep paper records of every applicant, which, in one agency alone, occupied 336 filing cabinets. Businesses will no longer be required to administer the former government's paid parental leave scheme, saving them an estimated $48 million. And associated with repeal day, national businesses will be allowed to operate under one workers' compensation scheme right around our nation, rather than have to operate in up to 8. Madam Speaker, next week's repeal day will be the first of many. Under this government, there will be at least 2 a year, because we will make people's lives easier, not harder. It's worth recalling that the first parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia passed just 513 pages of legislation. That's just half a page of legislation per day.
Whitefield.
That's worth contrasting with the last parliament, the 43rd,
is not
which
in her
passed
correct seat and will remain
half
silent.
an act of parliament every single day.
Oh, shame on you.
Between 2007 and 2013, under the former government, some 21,000 new regulations found their way into our national life. No doubt some of these were good and necessary, but some clearly were overkill at best. Why should a long daycare centre with 15 staff and 75 places have to do paperwork said to cost on average $140,000 a year, which is $2,000 a child or nearly $10,000 a staff member? The result of this is fewer childcare services and higher prices for the ones that exist. Why should a Sydney cafe that serves alcohol and has outdoor seating be subject to 21 local, 29 state and 25 Commonwealth regulations or sets of regulations. That's 75 different hoops to jump through that mean higher costs for businesses and fewer jobs for Australians. Why should Australian medical researchers collectively put 500 years of work into preparing grant applications, of which only 20% succeed? That's time not put into finding cures for disease. Likewise, Madam Speaker, why should every Australian university be required to report more than 50 sets of data to the Commonwealth Department of Education and a further 50 to other government entities? Because again, Madam Speaker, this is time and money that's not directed to teaching and research. Of course, government should be confident that standards are maintained and that taxpayers' money is accounted for, but it is too easy. It's too easy for officials to do their job at others' expense in the name of safety or accountability. A reason why bricks and mortar retailing is losing out to online sales is the compliance costs that shops face, from planning regulations to product standards. A reason why our farmers find it hard to compete is that $1 in 6 of their earnings, the NFF says, is spent on compliance. About 60% of Australian businesses are sole traders, and 85% have fewer than 5 employees.
The Prime Minister has the call. This is a serious matter.
All too often, Madam Speaker, the local newsagent, dry cleaner, baker and butcher has to be the accountant, marketer, HR manager and cleaner for the business, as well as the chief salesperson. They are virtually suffocating in red tape, and it's well past time to say enough. On the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Ranking, Australia has slipped 6 places in 4 years to 21st. Australia's ranking on the burden of government regulation is 128th. Yes, 128th in the world, nestled between Romania and Angola. On the Economist Productivity Growth Ranking, we come second last, just ahead of Botswana. The first instinct, Madam Speaker, the first instinct of democratic politicians confronted with a problem is to promise to make it go away. Like a fence at the top of a cliff, sometimes regulation is necessary, but there is a limit. There is a limit to what government should do to protect us from ourselves. More regulation is not the solution to every corporate, community or personal failing. Sometimes we just have to accept that mistakes are inevitable and that misfortunes are unavoidable. When someone in authority gets it wrong, the best outcome might be a timely resignation rather than more regulation. And when it comes to making us act responsibly, good example may be better than more rules.
On my left.
Madam Speaker, as Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, has conceded, government can't guarantee a risk-free life. Ambiguity, uncertainty, the wisdom that comes with failing and changing your mind, he says, are all essential to progress, because a risk-averse public sector will stifle creativity and deny to many the opportunity to be creative. So, Madam Speaker, since day one, this government has been cutting red tape. On day one, we began the process of scrapping the carbon tax. Repealing the carbon tax removes over 1,000 pages of primary and subordinate legislation and removes compliance costs from over 75,000 businesses. Repealing the carbon tax not only takes a $9 billion handbrake off our economy and gives a $550 bonus to households, but will provide a direct red tape saving to business of $85 million a year. And repealing the mining tax will save businesses more than $10 million a year in compliance costs. 55 announced but unlegislated tax measures will no longer proceed, including the previous government's $1.8 billion FBT hit on the car industry and the cap on self-education expenses that would have hit tradies, nurses and teachers. Every cabinet submission now has a regulation impact statement so that its potential impact on business, community groups and households can more readily be identified. All Commonwealth Government portfolios now have a dedicated deregulation unit formed from existing staff because it's sometimes more important to repeal old laws than to pass new ones.
The member for Moreton.
Each Cabinet Minister is expected to consult widely before finalising new policy because the first law of government should be do no harm. At the December COAG meeting, all states and territories agreed to create one-stop shops for environmental approvals so that major projects will only need to be assessed once, not twice. There's already a one-stop shop for offshore environmental approvals which the Office of Best Practice Regulation estimates will save businesses $120 million a year every year. Soon, National Health and Medical Research Council grants will run for 5 years, not 3, so that successful medical researchers will spend less time filling out forms. This government is making it easier for people to do business with government by reducing reporting requirements, by using credit cards more and by paying bills on time. This government has also scrapped the aged care workforce supplement that forced providers to sign up to union-dictated enterprise bargaining agreements.
The member for Moreton has one more utterance.
All these
he will join the member for
demonstrate
Whitefield.
our seriousness
One more.
about reducing red tape and making it easier for people to go about their lives. But this is just the start, not the finish. Every department and agency is conducting a comprehensive audit of the costs it puts on individuals and entities so that it can put a dollar figure on the cost of compliance and reporting and start reducing it every year. Every department and agency will be required to contribute towards the $1 billion a year every year in red tape cost savings that the government is committed to deliver. The Productivity Commission, Madam Speaker, is finalising the indicators that will make red tape reduction costs easier to judge. Not only will deregulation become a standing item on the COAG agenda, but there'll be less red tape within COAG, with the number of ministerial councils dropping from 22 to 8. The reviews that the government has in train into competition policy, workplace law and the financial system all have a deregulatory focus. The white papers that the government plans into tax and into the federation are both intended to reduce overlap and complexity. We are carefully considering the former government's changes to coastal shipping and its changes to trucking rates to ensure that they make doing business easier, not harder. Madam Speaker, for too long, governments have acted as if the Australian people work for them. People don't work for government. Government should work for people. It's government's job to serve the people, not people's job to serve the government. In simple terms, we work for you. And we're working for you today by creating the biggest bonfire of regulations in our country's history. Our mission is not bigger.
Member for Gorton.
Our mission, Madam Speaker, is not bigger government, it's bigger citizens with more opportunities. So to the Australian people I say, this is about saving you money, saving you time and trusting your common sense to make more choices about your life. I am proud of the progress that the government has made so far, but it's only the start, Madam Speaker, of what is to come.